The North American Pact, or NAP, an alliance made to bring peace and order to the United States, but fallen into corruption. Once respected and considered a top superpower in the world, now collapsed and abandoned. What happened to the North American Pact? From the outside, it looked like one of the most serious and fair powers out there, but it still died. Today we're going to see how the NAP collapsed, and why it was a long time coming. But real quick before this video starts, I'm epically asking you to subscribe to the channel. It will give you nothing at all, and it's actually mildly useless. But yeah, thank you if you do. The North American Pact was a defensive alliance consisting of nations in the USA and Canada. The idea for an NAP came out of hostility. Illinois and USA were at a point in their war where they just really wanted peace. But they also knew if they didn't do something, the same war would come up again. So the great and all-knowing higher-ups decided the best way to stop the war was going all the way and starting a defensive alliance. This idea has a lot of similarities to having a kid if you aren't happy in a marriage. It's not a good idea to rope yourself into something that you can't actually do, and it's not going to solve any problems. But from my view, this seemed like a good idea for specifically Illinois, who thought they could use this opportunity to take advantage of the USA, maybe to make a better claim map than before. But we all knew this was not Illinois trying to make peace. They were taking advantage of us. Then, Illinois tried to go big brain, and kicked the USA out of the NAP. Up to this point, the NAP had no enemies. They'd just removed the USA, and in turn started a war. This was obviously a big deal, because it meant they had people who weren't afraid to trash them. In fact, they had people specifically trying to trash them. So now they had the first and most important part of any downfall, an enemy. They had someone who would go out of their way to find the bad parts about them, and expose it. Though at this point, the USA didn't have much respect, so no matter what they did, the NAP was still held at a high standard, and known as an overall good alliance. They were still at their height. The world respected them. They weren't having internal problems, and they were beating the USA. But the USA had a trick up its sleeve. With the new add-on of Cubs trying to help them, they tried some new tactics, specifically leaking the NAP chats. This was the first big win for the USA, which is greatly needed. This leaked everything the NAP had ever said in their Greater 5 chat, the chat for the most important leaders of each nation to talk to each other. It was where all the higher-ups had been talking. This was not good for the NAP. Their secrets had been let out, and the world knew what was going on. It wasn't a good look, and though NAP's reputation didn't crumble because of it, it was the first step down a large staircase to their demise. Also, by the way, they mentioned me like 50 times in the chats, which just seems a bit over the top. I mean, sure, I'm at the top of your resistance, but that doesn't mean I'm that important. I mean, it seemed like they were a bit obsessed, but that might just be me. Another large L for the NAP was the whole voter fraud situation. I made a video on it, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it now. But if you didn't hear about it, I'll give you a quick rundown. A player named Rawhide wrote a book detailing instances of voter fraud in the USA. He then gave that book to Quebec, a member of the NAP. They publicized it, claiming the USA was filled with voter fraud. The USA responded, and that was that. There obviously wasn't voter fraud, and this was just a dumb thing for Quebec to say. But then after this topic died out, and I didn't mention this in my video because it happened after it came out, a player of the USA came out and said it was him who made the book, and he was basically looking for a way to tear apart the USA after losing an election. This was, in my opinion, the dumbest thing the NAP did over its time. It was obviously not true, and it was just a dumb way to try and make the USA look bad, in turn making the NAP look bad. But then finally, the USA died. They had won the main war of their existence, something they'd been trying to do for so long. And this was a good thing for the NAP, right? They'd gotten rid of the enemy, and their continent was at peace. No, I personally believe that this was the start of their downfall, because the thing holding this union in its consistent spot was the war. Everyone in the NAP wanted to beat the USA. They all held the same values and had the same ideals. But now that the war was over and the USA was gone, the nations started going in different directions. This was especially bad for Illinois because they had been using the NAP to take advantage of the USA situation and become a respected nation. But when the war was done, there was a clear break in the types of nations in the NAP. There were the nations who actually just wanted to make peace in North America, like Cascadia and Jefferson. And then there were the nations who wanted to control North America, like Illinois and Quebec. Now, Illinois needed to keep their reputation, though, so they went along with what the other nations did for a while. They let in Minnesota and Ohio, two nations that had left the USA and wanted to be at peace with these nations. This was very bad for Illinois, because Minnesota and Ohio still didn't like them. And not just this, they also started having problems with the CSA, who wanted land in the South, a place that Illinois still claimed, and was making new towns in. This started trouble, because with these nations quarreling, and in some situations having other nations taking the side of Illinois' enemies, Illinois was losing power. This was exactly what Illinois didn't want. They didn't want to be held to the same standards as nations like Ohio and Minnesota. They wanted to be considered the strongest and most important nation in North America. So they abandoned ship. Illinois, along with Quebec, left the NAP, marking the informal end of the North American Pact. This was why it collapsed. Those were considered the different nations in the alliance, the ones that nations were in the alliance to communicate with. And since they were gone, there was no reason to keep trying to pretend this alliance was doing anything. So the North American Pact disbanded. Now after they disbanded, the whole chat was again leaked, further confirming what Illinois was up to, and why it needed to stop. Now I'm recording this before I go on vacation, so I'm pretty sure something else happened to Illinois, but until I get back, this is the end. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and join the Discord. Gosh golly, I hope you enjoyed it. Toothbrush.